Back in the early 1990s, when I first started teaching, there was this very popular activity teachers used to do with particularly very small kids. And the activity involved having a picture which the teacher would put on their lap, and all the students would sit in front of the teacher. And the teacher would say to the students, I've got a picture here of the most important, the most valuable person in the world. And you can come up one at a time, come and see the picture. But when you see the picture, you are to tell no student what you see. So the students would come up and the picture would be behind this little cloth so no one else could see it. And the student would then take the corners of the cloth, lift it up and look at the picture. And what they would see would be a mirror. The mirror would reflect back to the student who they were. It was an activity designed to boost self-esteem, to make kids feel important and valued. But when you become an adult, do you look in the mirror and see someone of value and someone of incredible worth? I guess for many of us, that might depend on what type of day you've had. If you've had a fairly good day, you might look in the mirror and go, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good today. But if you're not having a good day, you might not feel that at all when you look in the mirror. Whether you've just fallen in love or you've just broken up with someone, or whether you've just missed a promotion at work or gained a promotion, whether you've just got a job in the first place or just lost a job, or maybe you just look at yourself in the mirror and realize you're just getting older and you losing that youthfulness you once had. What we see in the mirror tends to go up and down with the measurements we've got in our brain about how we measure ourselves. Self-esteem can fluctuate as a result. So the question I want to put to us is, what does the Bible say about self-esteem? What does Jesus say when he talks about this concept? And the answer simply is this: nothing. The word self-esteem is nowhere to be found in the Bible. The whole concept of it seems to be very much absent. The idea that Jesus says is that we first love God and then second we love people, but then he doesn't go on to say and we love ourselves. Love comes not from within us, it comes from outside us. And therefore our sense of self-worth is not determined by how we feel about ourselves, it's determined by how God sees us. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus tells a story of a shepherd who owns 100 sheep. He turns up to his paddock one day and he's about to either feed the sheep or take them out to the grass, and he counts his sheep and realises, hey, there's one missing, and he knows which one's missing. So he leaves the 99 and he takes off to go and find where this sheep has gone. He hunts through the valleys, through the forest. He goes everywhere he can until he finds his sheep. And when he finally finds the sheep, he puts it on his shoulders and he comes back. He doesn't just come back and put the sheep back in the pen. Instead, he goes around and he celebrates with his friends and his neighbours. He tells them, look, I had this sheep, I lost it, now I found it. It's a story which is really important because Jesus puts an aspect in this story we need to take note of. This shepherd owns 100 sheep. He's lost one sheep. Now, if you're a business person, you might say, well, yes, that one sheep is important still, but it does tend to diminish on how many sheep you own. If, of course, you've only got one sheep, well, then, of course, you go out and find that sheep at all costs because that's your entire business based on one sheep. But if you've got 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, the importance of going after one sheep starts to diminish. But this story, this parable, is not about a business. The kingdom of God is not a business, and God is not a CEO. God is a father, and he sees us as his children. The shepherd in this story has a father's heart for his sheep. When a child from a family goes missing, the parents will go into this frantic search to find that child, and they will be completely focused to continue on until that child is found. Now, the intensity of that search is in no way diminished by the amount of children who exist within that family. whether they've got 8 children, 6 children, 4 children, or 1 child. They will search as if that is the only child they have got. There was an article in the Guardian newspaper in Australia this year about the tragedy of drownings that happen each year at Australian beaches. Somewhere between 25 to 30 people over the last decade have lost their life each year through drownings. When people go to the beach, we have some very dangerous rips and currents in Australia. But one of the intriguing statistics the Guardian newspaper brought out is that when a family is in the water and the family find themselves caught in a rip, if there are children and parents in that family, there is a pretty good chance the children will survive and a very bad chance the parents will perish. And the reason for that is not because the kids are better swimmers. It's because when the parents realise that their own children are in danger, they will go to the point of sheer exhaustion, swimming as hard as they can to get their children out of that rip. And as they eventually get that child into a place of safety, that parent has used up so much of their energy trying to save their own child, they have nothing left to save themselves. And effectively they are sacrificed for the safety of their own child. You know, any child who loses their parent in that setting and grows up later on will have no doubt that they were valuable in the eyes of their parents, because their parents have proven that through the sacrifice they have made. The same applies to the sacrifice of Christ. The cross of Jesus is the mirror which God calls us to look into to see the worth we have in His eyes. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "The cross is God's truth about us." To look at the cross, to look straight into that, you see your worth before God. The sacrifice God is willing to make for you. And He's not doing that for billions of people. He's not doing that for 100,000 people. If you were the only person in this world, the only one, Jesus still would have gone to the cross for you. And the fact that we don't understand that, or probably doubt that, means we're looking at the parable which Jesus tells about the sheep and not getting it. There were all these other sheep the owner had, but he still put it all out there to get one back. One child a parent will go for, as if it is the only child they've got. And when Jesus tells the story of the parable of the sheep, there is a context which is really important to take into consideration. Matthew records, before Jesus tells this parable, he says, "Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him," Jesus. "And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, 'This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them.'" For the Pharisees and the scribes, they saw this other group, the people who were unworthy in their eyes, the tax collectors and sinners, the people who would look in the mirror each day and say, "I am not worth much in my culture." And yet, these are the people Jesus comes for. Jesus comes for the people who look in the mirror and feel lost. The people who look in the mirror and do not see worth in their eyes. They do not see what God sees in them. And Jesus comes to those people as a shepherd. He comes to find us and to bring us back to his pen, to bring us back into the kingdom of God and to remind us who we are. Jesus is a shepherd coming after lost sheep. And if you could just understand that God is your Father, if you could just see yourself through the eyes that he sees you, your feeling of self-worth would be through the roof, and you would fear the opinion of no one.